Over the weekend, the DNC fraud lawsuit was dismissed. I was actually with family for my dad's 60th birthday and not exactly sober. So I had to wait to talk about it till Monday. As you know, this lawsuit has been going on for over a year. It was filed by Jared Beck and Elizabeth Beck, two lawyers from South Florida, on behalf of Bernie Sanders donors as well as DNC donors. I think that I've interviewed Jared and Elizabeth a few times. There were some things that went on. They're not fond of me. That's unfortunate. But first and foremost, I think it was good that they brought this lawsuit. I'm not a legal expert, so I'm not really going to comment on whether whether their argument was the best or not, because I'd be bullshitting you. I don't know if their argument was good or not. But I do think it was right to bring the lawsuit because in America, we're supposed to have free and fair elections. We obviously don't have free and fair elections, but that's what's supposed to happen. In America, you're not supposed to be told. You're not supposed to have to be told that the process is neutral in order to make an action or not make an action. The process is supposed to be neutral by default. It's not neutral. It wasn't in the Democratic primary. It's usually not in general elections, and it hasn't been in elections for a very long time. Go back to the year 2000, and basically the Supreme Court basically electing George W. Bush. So there is, on one end, the legal case that they brought, which I'm not an expert on, so I'm not going to bullshit you and give an analysis on whether the Becks brought the best case or not. I just don't know. I could speak with other lawyers, but I don't know whether their case was the strongest or wasn't. But I'm going to tell you what I think about the judge's dismissal. I've read as much as I can on his dismissal. And from what I could see, essentially this judge is saying it really doesn't matter legally whether a political party or the DNC or the RNC is neutral or whether they follow their bylaws or charters. By law, that's what this judge essentially stated. I disagree. I think that the legal system, not just with this case, but in most cases, is really pretty much the injustice system because it adheres to very bureaucratic and technocratic legal terms as opposed to what is justice. And that's a whole separate discussion. So I'm going to read to you a part that I thought was just mind-boggling. So the judge rules, in evaluating plaintiffs' claims at this stage, the court assumes their allegations are true, that the DNC and Wasserman Schultz held a, quote, palpable bias in favor of Clinton and sought to propel her ahead of her Democratic opponents. Plaintiffs assert several fraud-type claims, but they do not allege they ever heard or acted upon the DNC's claims of neutrality. Plaintiffs also assert a tort claim on behalf of all registered Democrats, even though the harm they allege impacted all Democratic primary eligible voters. And under their theory, the entire body politic the same way. And finally, the plaintiffs claim that donors to the DNC are at an increased risk of identity theft as a result of the computer hack. But they do not allege that the DNC regularly keeps the type of information necessary to facilitate identity theft, or that the hackers targeted, much less obtained, that information. So, the most important part to me is essentially plaintiffs assert several fraud-type claims, but they do not allege they ever heard or acted upon the DNC's claims of neutrality. Now, right there is kind of nonsense. And share this video, let's get it out there. So, first of all, what this judge is basically saying is because the lawyers didn't articulate to his liking that their case was based on we acted, so millions of people donated, for some, thousands of dollars, or their time, volunteer time, whatever, the judge is basically saying that the lawyers did not make the case that they acted or donated based on the explicit promise that the process was neutral. So, first of all, nobody acts in terms of politics on being told, oh, this is neutral. This process is fair. You assume it is because America is supposed to be a democracy. America is supposed to be based on free and fair elections. So basically what he's saying is you would have to have it rubber stamped on your forehead, or you would have to have it spoon-fed to you this process is neutral, and then for you, after being told that, decide to donate your money, donate your time, whatever. Well, number one, that shouldn't be the legal basis because it, by default, is supposed to be neutral. But more importantly, if that's the standard, people did act on the explicit promise that it was neutral. You had Debbie Wasserman Schultz on cable news more times than I could count saying, I am a neutral arbiter. No matter who I favor as a DNC chair, we are neutral. You even had corporate outlets interviewing her, and some of them grilled her on that because she was a co-chair of Hillary Clinton's campaign in 2008. So what this judge is saying is the plaintiffs did not prove that people donated their money based on the explicit promise of neutrality. Number one, that's a ridiculous standard to have, and I don't know legally why that is the standard. But number two, if that is the standard, I think there is a case to be made that people did make their donations, did volunteer their time, in some cases gave up their jobs, based on the explicit promise of neutrality. Again, I am not a lawyer. I am not a legal expert. So I'm not going to comb through this lawsuit and try to throw out legal jargon and try to prove why the judge is wrong. It's not my expertise, and I never try to bullshit you. But what I will say is it's pretty telling that in the American legal system, if you want to call it that, essentially it could be acknowledged that a political governing body, which the DNC is breaking its charter, is breaking its bylaws, is breaking its promise to the voters, yet no law was broken. Now, legally, I think that if the case is appealed, if the case is brought in a certain way, a different way, maybe they could be successful. And I haven't spoken with the Becks on whether the case may be appealed. I will reach out. Whether they like me or not, I'll reach out. But I do think this is important going forward. Like I said, if you just came late, I think it's a great thing that the Becks brought this lawsuit. Even though there's been hostility against me and, they have had hostility towards me and other independent journalists, I don't take away from the fact that I think this was an important lawsuit. I didn't cover it as much as some people wanted me to because there just wasn't, from what I could see, there wasn't active things to cover. And I'm not going to relitigate that. I've already given you my stance on that. But I think it was a good thing for them to bring. I think they gave up a lot of their life to bring this lawsuit, and they deserve credit for that. But I will say it's very troubling for the future that essentially there doesn't seem at this point to be a legal resolution or a legal recourse if voters or donors or volunteers are screwed. What can you do legally if they're saying, yes, on one hand, let's say that the judge basically said, yes, they are impartial. I mean, they are being partial and biased, and they weren't neutral. Yet, voters, it's not proven that the donors donated their money on that promise. Again, that's a ridiculous standard that the judge is making, because in no election will people say, yes, I voted because I donated money because I just heard on the news, or I just heard Debbie Wasserman Schultz say, this is neutral. You assume when you donate your money that your candidate has a shot. You assume that when you donate your money, there isn't a DNC or an RNC pulling the strings from behind the scenes to stack the deck against your candidate. You assume when you donate your money that the DNC, while you're donating your money, is not planting hit pieces on your candidate in the media. You expect that from the Clinton campaign. You expect the Clinton campaign to plant hit pieces on Bernie Sanders with the media. You do not expect the DNC to do that because it's by default supposed to be a neutral body. So legal experts, way smarter than me, will need to tell me and the Becks and future law attorneys or activists if a judge and a court system acknowledges, yeah, they didn't honor their bylaws, they didn't honor their charter, yet tough shit. There's no proof that anyone donated their money based on any pledge of neutrality. Number one, very unreasonable standard because by default it's supposed to be neutral. All elections are supposed to be neutral. If not, we just live in a banana republic. But number two, it's just not the case. There was over and over statements made on neutrality. And by the way, a judge or lawyers cannot, whether it's the Becks or anybody else, there is no way to prove the mindset of a class of plaintiffs. The Becks, nor I, nor anyone can prove Diane Ames or Audrey Green or any of the people watching right now, any of the donors, any of the people that donated, went online, pressed the donate button, put in their credit card information based on an explicit promise that it would be neutral. There's no way to prove that. So I think that the judge is kind of putting out an unreasonable standard and a reasonable expectation, and frankly, an impossible case that the Becks could have made. Now, I am not a lawyer, so I can't say for sure that the Becks lawsuit was perfect and they did the best they could, because I don't know. I just don't know. But what I will say is what this judge said, which was the basis of his dismissal, doesn't pass the mustard to me. It doesn't pass the mustard that in a free and fair democratic election system, a judge or a legal system could say, yeah, they broke their bylaws, they broke their charter, but no proof that anyone actually acted based on that. What do you think? Millions of people that donated to Bernie Sanders would have donated if at the time they knew, oh yeah, the whole system's rigged. The DNC is working with the Clinton campaign and the Obama administration, by the way, which WikiLeaks showed, to basically paint Bernie as a maniac and a radical and a communist and plant hit media pieces and bury debates at times nobody would watch and all the other douchebaggery they did. So, what does this mean for the future? Because we have elections this year. We have elections in 2018 that are very important. We have elections in 2020. I and Nomiki are going to cover. Bernie Sanders is speaking in New York City tonight at a very historic church, Riverside Church in Harlem. We'll be covering that on TYT Politics Facebook page, probably around 6 o'clock. So come back at 6 o'clock. We'll speak with people who are going in. Bernie's going to be talking about his book there. But I think really what's troubling about this is there is no safeguard for voters, whether you're Bernie voters or any voters. There is no safeguard for your donation. A system can be rigged. A legal system could basically say, yeah, it was rigged, but no laws were broken. And that's because in America, the legal system is there to protect the powerful. The legal system is there to protect the cocktail crowd. The legal system is there to protect the elites. It's not there to protect poor people. It's not there to protect African Americans or Latinos or poor whites. It's not there to protect middle class or working poor people that donated money to Bernie Sanders or anyone else. It's not there for that. It's there to protect the bourgeoisie. That's the truth. So, some people might not like that I'm not ranting and raving about, and I wasn't, I didn't do this enough. But at the end of the day, folks, I've always said this, and you don't, if you don't like it, don't watch me. I don't know what to tell you. I am a progressive individual. During the campaign, I made it clear that I was for Bernie Sanders. It did not affect my facts. I never fudge facts to support Bernie or anyone else. But I put my cards on the table. If you want to watch me, if you don't, that's up to you. But it was not my job to cheerlead for the Becks. It was not my job to do their public relations and to cover things whenever they wanted me to cover it. That is not my job. It's not my role. My job is to cover things as I think they need to be covered. But I will tell you this. Number one, they deserve credit for bringing the lawsuit. They spent a lot of their own money on this. I mean, most of the last 2 years of their life on this. I give them credit for that. I think that, again, I don't know the legal I'm not a legal expert, so I can't say whether it's good, not good, whatever. But what I will say, this is very troubling for the future. This is very troubling for democracy. Because at the base of democracy, if we live in a democracy, which I've said all along we don't, if you cannot make change through the ballot box, even if you have the numbers, even if you have the energy, even if you have the movement behind you, even if you're right on the facts, right on the policy, the system is going to be rigged against you, whether it's voter suppression or the DNC working overtime towards one candidate. If your vote doesn't matter, if your vote doesn't count, or even the doubt creeps in people's minds that your vote doesn't count, that's not a democracy. And that's it. We'll see. I will reach out to them, see if there's appeals in the process, see if there's anything else that will be coming out down the pike. Overall, like I said, I think this case was important, whether they lost or not. I think it's when voters are disenfranchised, when donors are defrauded, whether they win in court or not, it needs to become a national media story. Of course, the national corporate media did not cover it. And when they did cover it, they were basically making the Bex and Bernie voters look like kooks and, sour grapes. But the bottom line is this. You have to fight for your vote. You have to fight for democracy. You have to fight for what's right. And by the way, one day this could affect conservatives. This isn't just a progressive thing. What if the RNC next time wants to screw Trump because they want Trump to go down and they're going to tilt their weight towards Mike Pence or Ted Cruz or whatever? That ain't right either. Even for candidates I have a lot of disdain for, they should have a fair shot. Because candidates, most of them are corrupt, but they do put their time into this. They do put their lives. They make sacrifices. Their families make sacrifices. Their staffers make sacrifices. And their voters and their donors make sacrifices. So, credit to some independent journalists that covered this. I've had some beef with some of them, but Nico House was very instrumental in covering this and, broke a lot of news with this. There were other journalists and independent journalists that covered this, so credit to them. They definitely covered it way back further than I did, and they deserve a lot of credit. I will continue to give you updates if there are any, and that's it. Thank you for watching.